All right, seeing that it's approximately 7:07, I'll open up the meeting of the Halifax Zoning Board of Appeals, May 6, 2020. We're going to be discussing first order of business would be petition number 920, the applicant being R&J LLC, regarding this comprehensive permit for what is known as the will be known as the Country Club Estates. All right, I think our first order of business, why don't we do this quick? I'm sure all the, in attendance, let me go through the attendances. Myself, the chairman, Robert Gaynor. We have the vice chair, Keziah Nasrallah. We have the clerk, Peter Parcellin, Robert Durgan, member, and Jerry Joy, member, and our alternate member, Dan Basawi, present during our Zoom hearing. Okay, so we'll move right on to our first order of business. I think regarding the permit process, we all received the email from who will be the Halifax Zoning Board of Appeals consulting engineer from the firm of Omri Engineering, that's AMORY. Mr. Pat Brennan included a letter to the board, and he will, after reviewing the different people prospectus, who's the board has decided that we would have Mr. Brennan and his firm be representing or helping us out in as the consulting engineering firm. Is Mr. Brennan on, Charlie? I didn't see him.
No, he's not.
Okay. I know we discussed this previous. I'd like to ask for a voice vote if we could. Just go through his own so we can sign off. We have. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
As Amy pointed out, Amy Questle pointed out a couple of nights ago, I think you actually have to make sure that all the members are recorded as voting one way or the other.
Sure. That's what I was just going to do, the voice vote. That would be, I'll write down the top. Why don't I start with Keziah Nasrallah. Keziah, you all, your vote as far as using the Mr. Brennan and Omri Engineering as our consultant engineer on the comprehensive permit application?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Mr. Parcellin, Peter?
Yes.
Bob Durgan?
Yes.
Mr. Joy, Gerald Joy?
Oh, he's muted, I think.
There we go. Sorry, Jerry.
Okay.
Jerry, your vote as far as bringing on Mr. Brennan and Omri Engineering as our consultant engineer to the comprehensive 40B project in Halifax?
Yes.
Okay, and Dan, you're Mr. Basawi?
Yes.
I'd like your vote, thank you. Myself, I vote yes also. So it passes unanimously. I do have the letter, Charlie. I will sign that off and get that back to you.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right.
Chairman, I have a question.
And who would that be?
Paul Cusson, representing the applicant.
Let me put you up there. Mr. Cusson, your name and where are you from, sir?
Paul Cusson from Delphic Associates, New Bedford, Mass. We're the consultants, 40B consultants to the applicant. And I just have a quick question. We have no objections to Amory Engineering. However, I assume they submitted to the board a scope of work and some kind of fee schedule. We would appreciate a copy of that for our records.
Sure, I did make reference to that. We do have that. I don't see a problem with certainly sending that off to you.
Yeah, a lot of myself can do that. That's fine.
Okay. And Mr. Cousin, so you will be you said Delphic Associates. You'll be representing R&J LLC in the comprehensive permit process.
That's correct. Myself and also Silver Engineering will be representing the client from an engineering point of view.
Okay. Well, seeing that certainly during the pandemic times here, our next order of business is the board. We feel that in order to make a proper presentation to the members and residents of the town of Halifax that it can't be done over the Zoom process. So we, as a board, we're going to postpone the hearing
Oh, continue the-
until, I'm sorry,
You will need to continue the hearing.
I'm sorry, continue. the hearing.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Yes, sir.
The hearing, is the hearing officially open?
Yes, I opened the hearing. Yes, I did.
So this is the beginning of the hearing for 40B.
No, this is in regards to the board meeting. We're
So you have not opened, I just want to be sure. So you have not officially opened the
that's
hearing.
correct.
You've
That's
had a
correct.
meeting tonight to discuss. Is that correct?
Yes, to
Okay.
continue the, right.
They want to bring in Joe Peznola in for advice on that.
Certainly. Good evening, everyone. Just to introduce myself and the strange person and in the boxes of faces. My name's Joe Peznola. I've been retained by the Halifax under the Mass Housing Partnership Technical Assistance Program, which is a grant program that the purpose of bringing me in is to help you, help the board, help the town navigate the process. I'm not an attorney. I'm actually an engineer, but in this role, I'm a consultant. I'm a facilitator. I'm an advisor to the board to try to help coordinate the process and make the process as easy as possible. I can do everything from interfacing with the technical team and making sure that the peer review gets done. And I can certainly be there for questions with regards to the process. What I normally do at the first hearing is give a general overview of Chapter 40B for the audience and board members to kind of brush them up on what is 40B, what is the process, and what is everyone expecting to see throughout the process. And then what I try to do is help the board organize their thoughts and the structure of each of the meetings, because this will go obviously for several meetings. There's a 180-day time limitation that's by the regulations from the open of the public hearing to the close of the public hearing. And many towns, many ZBAs take that full 180 days and have 5 or 6 hearings. And what I try to do is help the board organize each of the meetings. So maybe it's topic specific for a meeting. And then Mr. Chair, you can announce, you'd put that in the agenda and then announce at the beginning of the meeting that the topic tonight is stormwater or traffic or whatever it be, and try to limit even the public discourse and the questions and comments from the public to that topic, and ask, and that hopefully tries to organize and make the process as efficient as possible, because it's obviously it's a very different animal than zoning boards are used to dealing with special permits or variances, and you're taking on the role of all the other boards in town. So it's complicated, and it's a lot for you to do. And my job is to help you work your way through that. At the end of the process, once the hearing is closed, I'll work with Amy from KP Law to assist you in crafting the decision, making sure that proper conditions, if that's the way you go, proper conditions are memorialized in the decision, and that you're as informed as you need to be to make a decision. So I'm here for you.
All right.
I have reviewed the initial the submission, And I did submit to you on March 31st a letter which basically goes through the minimum requirements for the applicant to be here, minimum submission requirements under the regulations, and comment on how the application meets those items. Just to, I won't go into any detail because again, the public hearing's not open, but I'm happy at the first meeting to also go over that letter and my findings there.
Great, Joe, I appreciate that extremely. I'm sure the other members do also. And did I use the correct terminology when I said we're continuing on? I appreciate Charlie doing that too, that we're continuing until
Yeah, that was the reason for my question.
I don't, with regards to that specific question, it's not a continuance because the public hearing isn't opened. You are tabling the matter until a date specific in which you will choose to open the hearing. Two things to think about there, and belt and suspenders. The applicant has provided an extension to open the hearing. I would just, out of an abundance of caution, ask them to provide an additional extension to the date that you choose. Notwithstanding that, the governor has stayed all of the statutory requirements for you acting in any time frame, and as long as the state of emergency is in place.
That was my next question regarding the governor's order of March 10th.
Yeah.
2020.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Who is speaking, please?
Paul Cusson.
Yes, Paul.
Thank you. Yeah, we would be glad to issue an extension or a letter. I don't think it's really necessary.
Right.
And Joe can chime in, basically because of the governor's stay in place order, which expires on the 18th. My understanding is that given that situation, the board has 30 days to open up a hearing from, I think it would be the date that the governor lifts his order. But if Joe wants us to send a letter to a date that you guys are going to pick, we're willing to do it either way, even though I don't think it's really absolutely necessary, but we can do that.
Again, belt and suspenders, it's a one line letter from the applicant that just grants you that extension. So
we'll be glad to do that once the board determines what that date is going to be, and we can send that out tomorrow.
Okay, so I'll bring that to the attention of the board members here. Let's look at a June date. We had discussed previously that perhaps we're throwing around June 10th or June 17th. It's a Wednesday. This of course is all up to the governor also at this point, whether he's going to extend the the gathering requirement, from the 10 people it is now to maybe another number, some uncertain number in the future. But how do the board members feel about about June 17th?
That's fine with me.
Yeah, that's fine.
Peter, who was that? Peter?
Yep, that's fine.
Kasaya, how about you?
That's fine by me.
Bob?
Fine with me.
I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
It's fine with me.
And Jerry?
That's fine with me too.
And Dan, how about you?
Yes, that's fine.
All right, so seeing it's the vote, I'm sorry.
You might want to check with the applicant, with Paul and with Joe, to make sure, if we're going to try and move this along in June, it'd be helpful to make sure that they're going to be available also.
Joe, you also, can you make the June 17th meeting?
yes, I'm available, Mr. Chairman.
Great. And Mr. Cusson, how about you?
Yes, we're available.
Where are you?
I've got a couple of other questions once we get off the subject, but we're available on the 17th. I assume at 7 p.m.
Yes. Right now, it's would hope that we would be able to use the Great Hall at the Halifax Town Hall on Plymouth Street in Halifax, and which was basically where this meeting was scheduled for. And so right now, why don't I just take a quick, well, we just went through a quick voice vote, so it's the,
Would you like a motion?
why don't I use it? Yes, I'll entertain a motion, please.
I'll make a motion to postpone the hearing. What petition is it?
Table the,
920.
Okay,
Petition
I'll
number-
make a motion to table petition number 920 until Wednesday, June 17th at 7 p.m. and request that the applicant submit a letter agreeing to that extension.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to extend the meeting to June 17th, 7 p.m. at the town hall with a letter from the applicant. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, great. So moved. We'll move to June 17th. Yes, because we'll have to publish that also. The board has been made aware that there are interested parties that do wish to participate in the hearing process of the comprehensive permit, and they have notified the zoning board. And so we do intend to hear from everybody, who wants to participate once it's feasible to do that. So we'll look forward to moving on to June 17th. Mr. Cousins, you said you had a.
Yeah, a couple, just kind of a general question, and Joe or Charlie maybe can help out. This is really an unusual way of doing business. My understanding is that all of the funds have been deposited for peer review. What I'm wondering, Joe, is that does it make sense at this stage for engineer to engineer, including yourself, to discuss between themselves questions that they may have, so that when the meeting is open on the 17th, we'd be a little bit ahead of the game, sort of speaking, and that that the engineers at least have had an opportunity to review and ask questions. I know that, Joe, you've already had a couple of questions from our engineer, and they submitted some documents to you. So I'm hoping the board will allow that to happen.
You mean just a conversation between them? Because I
Yeah.
personally would like to have it presented to each member of the board as well as the participants from the town, if there were
Yeah.
issues and different things that have to be addressed. I'd rather.
Yeah,
have
of course. Yeah, of course. I mean, the kind of thing I'm talking about is, Joe had some questions that had to do about the site, which were good questions, and our engineer was supplying some information, and maybe other things, regarding, things that we would take a look at, storm control, storm management, and those kinds of things. And there may be other things that the engineer may, since you've voted to have him on board, I think it's just helpful to everyone that if they should have any questions prior to the meeting, that the engineers there's no decisions, nothing made like that, but from questions, and possibly the other engineer can get answers to your engineer's questions. So it's more of a discussion between engineers, which is
So then it would be
pretty
addressed
common
at
once
the
a
open
once a
meeting.
hearing is actually open.
Right. Okay. That was my big question. They could work out details, technicalities, and whatnot, and then have the question and the answer certainly brought in front of the board and
Yes.
to the Great Hall.
Yeah. Yes.
Joe, that sound feasible to you?
I think we need to be careful, Mr. Chairman, on getting too much into the public record before the hearing is open. This isn't the only 40B that's trying to navigate these kind of crazy times. And I have worked with KP Law on another project, and what the conclusion to that was the board could engage peer review and have that peer review study done, and the initial findings of that peer review presented to the board and read into the record at the opening of the hearing. what we haven't discussed or moved into motion on any of the other projects was this idea of additional interaction in which the more peer review engineer issues the letter, and then I think what Paul's talking about is for there actually to be a response from the applicant's engineer and some interaction between the two before opening the hearing. I think that may be premature, and I would want to get input from Amy from KP Law before that went too far. But certainly, based on the prior, we can try to make up some time for the applicant because there has been delays because of this crisis, and get the money's in the 53G. Board has voted to engage Armory, and I think that Charlie can talk to Armory and get them going. And then while that's happening, we can have a discussion with Amy at KP Law and see if more can happen in advance of.
That certainly makes sense, especially I would want Ms. Quessel to certainly be updated and brought up to speed on anything that was being discussed as far as details or even technicalities. And like you said, the hearing hasn't even opened yet. It was a good point that you're right. It may be a little premature at this point.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think what Joe alluded to is I'm okay. He basically is saying, I think, that it's probably okay or a good idea to have Amy do their initial review and submit the typical comments they may have. If they could at least do that, I think that by itself is a big help.
Yeah, that's
because there will be time for additional comments from members of the board and everybody else that would also be addressed.
right.
Correct.
We wouldn't be limiting ourselves to anything, Joe, is what I'm saying, right?
Right.
Okay.
So if, obviously we get the initial peer review to the ZBA, but that's only initial. So as the meeting goes on, as there are hearings on the various subjects, as the butters, for instance, have questions or whatever, what happens with the peer review is the peer review engineer then continues doing that review, taking in that input from the meetings and everything, and saying, okay, I need to look at this issue that I haven't looked at. So those questions that come up, whether it's from the members of the ZBA or whether it's from other interested parties such as the butters, they get integrated as part of the peer review process. It doesn't matter that it starts off with an initial. It matters obviously that the other questions that come up during the hearing are brought into the peer review process.
Excellent point, Charlie. I mean, in the normal circumstance, you have that all of the abutter input, you have maybe the town staff and department input, and the peer reviewer can kind of include that in their review. They're going to have to do that kind of after the fact, so there may be some inefficiencies, and maybe that increases the cost of the peer review, but I can't see that's appreciable. And obviously we'll just stay on top of the expenditures and share that with the applicant. And if there's need for supplemental funds to the 53G, then requests can be made.
All right. Charlie, anybody else that we need to hear from, or that's, I don't have anything on like a chat line or anything like that.
Well, I mean, I know Amy Troop is, in the audience, so to speak, but you haven't opened the hearing yet. So
right.
You couldn't, at this point, take comments about the actual plan that's presented or the application from her or from anybody else because you haven't opened the hearing. I followed up, the question I asked was following up on a comment she had made in the chat section. I'm hoping that answered her question or comment.
Oh, so there was no specific question.
Well, she had written, is it redundant to get engineers started prior to abutter issues are heard and considered? And so what I was trying to do was follow up on her comment and explain, through Joe and such, that in fact, as the hearing goes on, the questions and comments from abutters and other interested parties can be brought into the peer review engineer's work, in the sense of it's not the initial peer review report, or whatever you want to call it, isn't that. It continues on as the hearings go on.
Absolutely. You're gonna
If I may, Charlie,
be retained as long as you need them to be, and issues will arise throughout the process
right.
that will have them revisiting or visiting new issues that come up, certainly. And as I said, there may be some inefficiencies with this, but that's certainly, I think, I don't want to speak for the applicant or Mr. Cousin, but it's worth it to get things going, and deal with maybe some of those inefficiencies.
Yeah, I agree, Charlie. It's not unusual at all when an engineer is doing the peer review, as Joe had indicated through the process, new issues are raised. Have a drink, Joe. That new issues are raised from time to time, and it's not unusual for a review by the engineer. It's sort of an ongoing process, and I'll explain a little bit more in the hearing. But the peer review not only happens during the hearing process, but even after the ZBA issues a decision, usually with several conditions, that those conditions have to be addressed in a final set of plans, and that's still peer reviewed again. So the peer review is an ongoing process, and even though there might be some inefficiencies, we're willing to absorb that cost, for the inefficiencies. I think it would be beneficial to our client.
And Bert, Amy asked a couple other things. One, I think you've already confirmed yourselves that the cost for the peer review is paid by the applicant. It's not.
Yes, it is, according to the, yes.
Right, and then she also asked, and I think you dealt with this already in one of your comments, was that you have received a letter from an abutter, which was basically saying, I want to make sure I'm going to be able to participate. Right. And that's
exactly.
And the point, as you mentioned earlier, was by tabling this and moving it to June, whether it's the abutter or anybody else to participate, that's why you're doing this, in order to give everybody that opportunity.
Right. In hopes that even the gathering is increased somewhat, just to make sure everybody gets heard, and especially the abutters, so that's good. Anything else, Charlie, you think? Or we do have a date?
I'll just make sure the room's available, and with the hope that we may have to do some social distancing up there, but we'll see if we can make everything work.
Right. And we'll send a letter up. We'll send a letter off to Amy Questle too, just keeping her apprised of. Hopefully she'll be able to attend that June 17th meeting. I'm sorry, Joe, I interrupted you there. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Just point of information. The Boston Public Improvements Commission recently had a public meeting on abiding by the restrictions on gatherings. And it just may be something to think about now that you've set the hearing date, but you really don't know whether the governor is going to extend that. And just what they did there.
I hope not.
Yeah, what the Public Improvements Commission did there is they had 3 rooms and video conferencing set up. And in one room was the board, and one room was the set number of people that wanted to that were up to speak on the matter, and then a waiting room for other people that could social distance and whatnot. So it just might be something to think about to have set up in advance.
Well, for what I'm going to do is I'm going to check with the school. It'd be a different set of logistics, but I'm going to check on the multi-purpose room. The acoustics are terrible, but if we got, I think the maximum with social distancing that we could do up in the Great Hall might be 25. And I know we anticipated back before COVID occurred that if we were going to have that hearing in March, that we might very well get more than that. So if that's the case, we're not technologically savvy necessarily enough to get into multiple rooms. In fact, there aren't really any other rooms here in the town hall to be useful for something like that. We may just need to get a much larger room and fit everybody in the multi-purpose room in the school.
All right, yeah, it's something to consider, something certain we can take a look at to see if we can, accommodate as many people as we can, and certainly comply with governor's orders and whatnot. Okay, so unless there's anything else, gentlemen, members of the board, and anything else that we need to be addressed here? Are we all good? Kasai, are you good?
Good.
Peter?
Yeah, I'm good.
Bob, you guys all set? Jerry?
Yes.
And Dan, you good?
Good. Yep.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting and to continue it until the June 17th date at 7 p.m. in the Great Hall.
Motion to adjourn the meeting till June 17th in the Great Hall.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Here's a motion and second to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries.
Paul and
Okay.
Joe, thanks for making
See you in
this.
person on the 17th.